Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Houselights, House of Anderson. That's right. We are taking every single film directed by Wes Anderson and talking about it, and you guys are watching it and listening to us. We thank you so much for tuning in. With me, as always, is John Mills. John, how are you doing?
I'm here to complain about the state of the baths on this podcast. I find them a little bit run down. And would appreciate it if we could, maybe spruce them back up. That'd be nice.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that was super distracting to me in watching this movie. And for those of you wondering, and why would you be wondering because you downloaded this podcast, we are talking about the Grand Budapest Hotel today. And my name is Tristan Riddell. We are on the Nerd Party, and we thank you for listening, and we want you to go to thenerdparty.com to check out all of our other shows. We've got movie shows, TV shows, we've got stuff about books, and, like independent movies, and, Doctor Who, and Babylon 5, and everything that you could possibly imagine at thenerdparty.com. Something for everyone, and something coming out every single day of the week. So go there and check it out. You can find us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Just type the Nerd Party. You'll find us. Now, John.
Yes.
You have not seen the Grand Budapest Hotel prior to this podcast, correct?
That's incorrect.
That is incorrect. Okay,
no,
so
this
you
one
did
I did
actually
see.
You did. Okay,
yes, yes.
So, like,
this is the one that brought me back
seen.
in.
Okay, yep. I got you.
Yep. I had by this time, I guess life had settled down enough. This was between second and third child, so life had evened out and things were a little bit, more manageable. And so I managed to get out to go see this. I remember a fair amount of buzz around it. In fact, like a lot of positive notices, talking about this is Wes Anderson's return to form, sort of thing. So I went with. My cousin was there. I can't recall if anybody else was there with us. I remember the movie theater I saw it in. I was still living in Virginia at the time. Saw it, one of those hipster theaters in the planned development sort of thing where it's like, ooh, we show things on film every so often. And it's like, okay, fine, whatever. But it was a nice theater. They served beer, which was unusual for theaters in the area back then. But yeah, so went to go see it and experienced it in the theater with my cousin and somebody else who I can't remember. So might have been another relative for all I know. So I don't know. And what about you? Did you manage to get out to the theater for this, or was this another wait for the DVD?
I did. I think because I saw Fantastic Mr. Fox, I saw Moonrise in theater, because ever since I think it was when I saw Life Aquatic, I think the only one that I missed was Darjeeling Limited. For some reason, that just didn't grab me. But like ever since then, I needed to go see Wes Anderson in theater as much as I possibly could. And I didn't know what to think about this one when I went to go see it. I was just kind of like, okay, like this is, you could feel Wes Anderson's style becoming a little bit more cemented with Moonrise. And then when I saw the trailers for Budapest, it kind of felt like that he was slapping me in the face with it. And so I wasn't quite sure what to feel. And so I went with my wife, as I normally do with Wes Anderson films. And it was a good movie-going experience. I have no complaints. I have no stories to tell, nothing that particularly struck me. But as what happens with a lot of Wes Anderson films, when I walked out of the theater, I had no idea what to feel. I was just like, did I like this? Did I not? What did I not like about it? What did I like about it? I was really confused because, like, when I saw Moonrise, I felt the same way. So I want to ask you, when you were walking out of the theater and you were talking with your cousin and that person who you really don't love that much because you can't remember who they were.
God help me if it was my wife and I just can't remember.
What were you saying to them? Like, what were you, when you were walking back to the car, what were you conversing about?
We were both talking about how much we liked it. I was surprised by how much I liked it. Like I knew I would be entertained at the minimum, but it really wound up very much affecting me. I thought that this was both at the time and for this rewatch. I do think that this is Anderson in full command of his faculties. I don't know what might have changed. What was it that maybe the writing behind the scenes was different. Maybe he was reinvigorated by the source material that he was pulling from, because this is as a tribute to a writer whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, but it says it's in recognition of that writer's works and everything. I think that it just caught me off guard how much I liked it. And I immediately and still attribute a lot of that to Ralph Fiennes bringing in energy that is just wonderful. I would never before this, I don't think, have thought of Ralph Fiennes as a specifically comic actor.
Yeah.
But he was so endearing in this. And I still remember the first, I probably had a suspicion it would go that way, because I remember on the commercial that I saw where it had him talking to Ed Norton saying, "Oh yes, and of course you expect me in her murder." And then he just turns around and just starts running for his life. And, I just think that there's such a great energy from him. But I also think, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Anderson always has that framing device. It's from a book. It's a play, like in Rushmore. And so the curtains open on the different acts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always that sort of surreal separation, an acknowledgement that it's a non-reality that you're participating in. I'm of the opinion that this is particularly successful because with the use of narration and that sort of double step through the looking glass of having the girl reading the book and then hearing the narration and then seeing it, it's almost like Inception, where you're 3 levels deep by the time you get to Jude Law and F. Murray Abraham. And then you've got a 4th level where you're seeing the actual thing happening. I think that is really a great refinement of his style and really brought something extra to it. I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that I'm unique in that interpretation?
I don't think you're unique in that interpretation. I think a lot of people liked it, and I do like that type of style because, you reference Inception, which is an obvious example of going deeper within a story. But my mind always goes to Joss Whedon's Serenity, because like when you start the movie, you have it starts out and you see the Earth and space, and somebody is narrating, and you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, sci-fi. This is a sci-fi film. It starts out like that, but then you kind of the camera goes back a little bit, and it's a teacher teaching in a classroom, and they're the narrator, and they're teaching a class. And you see that the protagonist is actually in that classroom as a young girl. And then it turns out that, oh, it's just this girl's nightmare. And then there's a rescue attempt, and the girl gets away, with the help of her brother. And that turns out that somebody is just watching a hollow recording of that event.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to the title, and it's just like, it's a world within a world within a world. And you like, it kind of throws you off your guard. While I like that, I thought that this was a little unnecessary in Grand Budapest. Like, I didn't dislike it. It didn't put me off. Like, I wasn't just like, oh, this is ridiculous, or why are we doing this? I was just kind of like, oh, if I remove that, I don't think I'd miss it. I think we could have just done Jude Law and F. Murray Abraham as the framing device and then go within it, because I didn't feel like it added anything to it. Now, I want to ask you, why do you think it adds something to it? Because I'm not arguing with you. I really want to know, like, what adds to it to you besides just complexity?
Well, I think it's because it has this added appeal, I guess, in that it's acknowledging, okay, we're doing the artifice that we always do. Here's a book. We're reading a book. But I really think that the added step of going through Tom Wilkinson as the aged Jude Law and then having him remember it. It's giving us the experience of the girl reading the book, which is a story of a man telling a remembrance of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually, in a strange way, I mean, from my perspective, actually makes me more invested in the story in some way. I don't know specifically how the mechanics of that would work on an emotional level, but in some way it wound up making me more rooted in the story and playing along with it. And I think also that there is an acknowledgement, definitely, that could it exist without that extra step? Most likely it could. But you would lose the book aspect of it, because just opening with Tom Wilkinson narrating and then going to the remembrance, you're saying you would skip all the way and just start off with Jude Law getting to the hotel.
Yes.
And telling,
And to be fair, I like most of my movies just to start with Jude Law, but that's just me.
Well, who can fault you? No, I actually think what it does is it warmed me up to what was going to happen. And most likely, I would say that one of the things that all of us can struggle with a Wes Anderson movie from time to time is the artifice. But if we're experiencing a person narrating an experience that was narrated to them while watching the story that's being told, sort of thing, it removes any of that. I think it helps with the suspension of disbelief, in other words, of the way that the world works.
I think I can buy that, but I feel like it would have to happen on a subconscious level. And the only reason why I bring that up, and this may sound pretentious, is that I feel like when you ask somebody who's tangentially aware of Wes Anderson and you ask them what their favorite Wes Anderson film is, they'll say Grand Budapest Hotel. But if you ask someone who is a diehard Wes Anderson fan, you'll hear Rushmore or Royal Tenenbaums or something like that. And this is just in my personal experience. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like most of the people who say that they absolutely love Grand Budapest and it's their favorite Anderson film, like, aren't usually hip to, Wes Anderson's style and his artifices and his way that he introduces you. Because one reason, like you say, that it kind of justifies that whole amped up reality, that dreamlike, thing where he uses miniatures and things like that, where it kind of separates you a little bit. But he's done that several times before without needing that many layers. And again, what I'm saying, I'm not saying like it was a horrible thing. I just felt like it was an unnecessary thing. Although, as a parent, when Tom Wilkinson is trying to speak to the audience, and then his son comes up and like he's about to shoot him with a toy gun, he's like, "Don't do it!" And then he does it anyway, and he yells at him, and then he continues to speak, and then the son comes back up and holds onto his shoulder and says, "Sorry." He's like, "It's okay." And he continues on. That was such a real moment to me. Like, so that in itself, I think, would be worth it to me just to keep that moment.
But see, then let me take that and say it gives a real humanity to this Jude Law character. Because if you just pick up with Jude Law arriving at the Grand Budapest Hotel, he's just another wacky add-on to the story, as opposed to you give him that moment of humanity before you take that extra step in. I think the argument could be made, do you need the girl opening the book at the statue? Is that, I could be argued out of that being a necessary step, right? That's so obviously done just as I think tribute to the person who the movie is a tribute to, I guess. But you could argue me into removing that. But okay. I think that the Tom Wilkinson thing is very necessary.
Okay. I think I could secede to that, where yeah, like I think I could say, like what I said, like I really like that moment. But I think it does kind of ground the Jude Law character a bit more. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
totally give you that one. Absolutely.
Cool.
So, with with Grand Budapest Hotel, one thing that definitely intrigues me is the use of miniatures and the kind of the facade of the hotel, the backdrop, the like we've talked about how his cinematography is very centered. We've talked about his color scheme and everything like that. Although with this color scheme, it's much more pastel. You have much more pastel than anything deeply rooted into what you saw in Fantastic Mr. Fox. I felt like Fantastic Mr. Fox was very typical Wes Anderson with your browns and your yellows and your deep reds. You don't get any of that in Budapest Hotel. Now, it's a twofold question. Like, how did the miniatures affect your experience of the movie? Like, did you enjoy them? Were they a distraction? Did it matter to you? And also, how did the color palette feel to you?
Okay, I thought the miniatures were cute, pretty adorable, in fact, especially when the aspect ratio switches, and it's that old-timey sort of thing. It's almost like the experience of watching Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, where he had issued himself the challenge of only using the types of effects that were available in the yesteryear of Hollywood. And so I think it just goes in, it goes hand in hand. It works with that aspect ratio and the type of story and the era that it's being told in. In terms of the color palette, the yellows and the browns do come in early in that closet room. The small room without a toilet that Zero stays in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and I guess you do see some of that, like when we're in the 60s with Jude Law and Abraham, you definitely do see that, and it roots it in the time. Like you have that gold, that disgusting yellow gold that everybody had on their refrigerator during the time.
Oh yeah.
Like you definitely have that, but like in the main storytelling aspect, you had mainly pastel colors, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I do like, if you look at the lobby, in the different times, and you look at the color scheme and just the amount of thought that went into kind of giving the audience the feeling that Wes Anderson wanted to give you, where in the 60s, when we're introduced to the hotel, you have those deep browns, you have the yellow and everything like that, where it's not as luxurious, it's not as grand, pun intended, and where it's kind of run down. Like you talked about the baths being run down, where I'm just like, if I walked into that room, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be having a bath here. I'm just going to go back to my room and have a bath. And then you go to when Ray Fiennes' character is running the hotel. It's very, very bright, very pleasant, very inviting pinks, as it were, those kind of things. And then when the SS stand-in take over, and you have stark contrast, blacks and deep reds and everything like that. And it's all the same location. It's the same place, but yet it gives you a different feeling. I really enjoyed that.
I completely agree. I think that the color palette suggested the sort of opulence that they were going for in the olden days. And I think that something that the 1960s era successfully evokes is that aesthetic of the Eastern Bloc Soviet nation state that existed back then, where they even make reference specifically to the fact that this is a thing that the hotel had fallen on hard times because of the agreement that he made to preserve the hotel, to keep it from being destroyed, sort of thing. But that sort of loss of style in favor of utilitarianism showed how much the world had changed around, and I think plays into that specific line that Zero F. Murray Abraham gives where he says, and I'm about to cite the line, but I'm going to butcher it. But he says basically that the world that Gustav was holding on to didn't exist when he was there anyway. Like he was holding on to a vestige of a memory sort of thing. And I think that's also extremely poignant because you're sitting here through this entire movie watching this remembrance of an opulent, beautiful place. And it's this acknowledgement of maybe it wasn't that great to begin with because the world had already started to move on. And so this whole remembrance that we've seen is definitely seen through rose-colored glasses.
I live 20 minutes north of Chicago. And so it's definitely in my backyard. And there are certain times when you go to certain areas of Chicago and see older buildings or older hotels. You walk into, like, you go to a modern hotel, you know exactly what it looks like. It's a modern hotel. But there's certain times when you go into an older hotel and you'll see crown molding. You'll see giant chandeliers. You'll see certain paint peeling here and there that maybe hasn't been touched in a while. You'll see, like a grand staircase. You'll see gold trimming. And it's just really fascinating because when you walk through it and you see it, you're just like, this would never be made today. It would never, ever be made today. Not even in this, like, I'm agreeing with you with the whole utilitarian thing where it's not even because of cost or efficiency. Or I should say, like, not even because of cost or artistic style. It's just people feel like it's unneeded. Like, why would I need crown molding here when I'm just going to stay here for a couple of nights?
Yeah. And the thing is, it does spur the interesting discussion. And I think that there's definitely an air of this in there of, did we lose a little something with that? Like hotels used to be an experience. You would go to a hotel and it was that, wow, this is a fancy away from home place. This is an experience I can't get. And, the concierge is so important. And like he says, who gets you tickets to the opera when it's sold out? Who gets this done? Who gets all of these things? And it is a shame, I think. I know that you can make certain arguments about, well, not everybody could have experienced, but I'm setting those aside. I'm talking about that idea that we have very rooted in our collective unconscious of the fact that a hotel used to be a true escape. It was an experience you couldn't get elsewhere. You were treated like royalty when you walked in. You were an important person because you chose to stay at that hotel. Whereas now, as pretty as a hotel may be, I've had the experience of, where is everything? I don't know. Look it up on Google. There's not that personal touch anymore. And in essence, it's almost like this. And I know I'm verging very close on, old man screaming at clouds sort of thing, but it's, I was talking about it with my wife just recently about the idea of we're almost like an IKEA culture where it's, you go in and I'm shopping in the warehouse, basically. That's the reason customer service sucks. Whereas if you go back to the days of the grand old hotel, I didn't have to look for anything, quote unquote, I didn't have to look for anything. It was, oh, I need this. And Gustav says, it's your job to know what the guest wants before the guest even knows that they want it.
Right.
And that there's something that would be nice about that, to have that feeling of being pampered. I don't expect it, and I don't think anybody does. But I don't know. It adds to the air of romanticism, I guess.
I think absolutely. I think that whole section that we just talked about just now about how hotels have changed and everything like that really lends itself to the story, because it's a romantic view of what hotels used to be like in that certain echelon of service. Now, obviously, there's always been dives. There's always been roadside motels. We're not saying that. We're not saying every hotel used to be this way, but there was a level of service and expectation when you went to it. And it kind of makes me think of when Marty McFly went back in time in the 50s, and then he sees somebody go to a gas station and the guy gets out of his car, and they fill the gas tank up for him. Like 6 other people come out, like they're washing his windshield, buffing his like cleaning his tires and everything like that. And it just shows you how that would never happen today in any way, shape, or form, no matter where you went. And it's all about like rooting the audience in that romantic era. It shows the difference of what is now and what came before. And I think that's why that's in one way where the narrating levels, like those Inception levels, to bring it back to what you were talking about, really works, because we've often talked about how Wes Anderson is obsessed with the 70s. Like he loves the 70s, and that's what helps make it timeless. Now this is in the 70s, but he goes to the 60s. We all know the 60s. It's very iconic. Like we some of us are old enough to have been there, or we're like we're all old enough to know a generation before us who was there, and we all know it from movies and TV and everything like that. But we don't see that much made in modern times referencing back to the Ray Fiennes era. And so it really does show what that hotel used to be like. It shows that this is going to be a romantic vision of the past and a romantic version of a story. And yeah, I think this all plays into it. Like everything that Wes Anderson did was in service to the story. And for that, I definitely applaud him for it.
So in terms of that, though, I mean, I'm interested just to sort of like reflect a question back on you to say, I'm getting the sense that you might still be wrestling with a couple of aspects of this. And I'd be curious, is it the characterizations that are more of a challenge to be with, or are these sort of your typical Wes Anderson characters, and so they don't necessarily work for you as well in a different time period? Do you think that is the script too jumbled? Is it too choppy at any point? Like what are the specific flaws in the diamond that you see here?
I think you nailed it on the head right away. Like I think anybody who's listening, it's clear that I'm not, I'm not professing my love for this movie. And like, I don't hate it by any means, but definitely the characterizations. I think that is what really bothers me, is that Ray Fiennes steals the show. He's fantastic. He's hilarious. He gives a world-class performance. And like you, I never would have expected that he would have been that good at comedy, but he just is. Like, he's just so utterly talented, and I absolutely love him. But to me, I feel like he's the only one carrying this movie. And that's what really bothers me, is that when you look at so many Anderson films, like if you look at Moonrise, if you look at even Fantastic Mr. Fox, you look at Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore and Life Aquatic, you have so many characters that you care about and that are interesting or quirky or, like have heart or is rooted in some, facet of the human experience or the personality. But in this movie, I don't care about anybody else than Ray Fiennes.
Really?
And it really bothers me. It really bothers me that I don't care. Like, Willem Dafoe's character is one dimensional. Harvey Keitel feels out of place. Bill Murray's barely in it. Jude Law is really interesting, but I mean, he's just a narrative device. He's just a framing device. But I don't care about Agatha, and Zero is completely devoid of any personality.
Wow. That's every word that you just uttered is wrong. No, I as you know, I marginally respect your opinion most times.
Marginally so. I mean, that's more than more than last week, but that's good. I'm glad I'm up to marginally.
Yeah, no, I completely disagree, because I think, yes, Ray Fiennes is an absolute revelation. And I think that he just absolutely does steal the show in that respect. Because when I think of the Grand Budapest Hotel, I think of Ray Fiennes and how much he makes me laugh throughout the whole thing. And even rewatching it this time, the way he delivers his lines, it's one of those things where there are certain scenes where he's so good that I want to step back through time when they yelled cut and walk up to him and say, how did you do this? How did you pull that off? It's so good.
But I want some.
Exactly. What did they inject you with specifically? I do not think that Zero is devoid of anything. In fact, I think that F. Murray Abraham, I so enjoy his portrayal as the older Zero. And when he pauses and is crying because he says, I have to talk about Agatha now. I think that what is magnificent about what Tony Revolori does with Zero is that he is exactly what he needs to be to shine the light on Gustav, who Zero is telling the story about. Zero is purposely emphasizing Gustav as opposed to himself. And so I think it's an incredibly clever way to keep the focus on F. Murray Abraham as the Zero we care about, as opposed to the Zero he's talking about, which is his older self. Through his whole time speaking to Jude Law, before they're even in flashback, he's very self-deprecating and modest. And so a Zero who draws more attention to himself in the past would not make as much sense. I hope that sort of makes sense what I'm talking about there. Is Zero may have been a scene stealer, but Zero telling us about his life, he would have de-emphasized himself in order to shine the light on Gustav and talk about what a great and wonderful man he was and why it affected his life so much. And I think that Agatha is great. I'm so moved by Zero's love for her, and I think it works so incredibly well. And again, I made reference to Harold and Maude back when we were talking about Life Aquatic.
Yeah.
And because of his decision to cast from that movie. And I think that there's a Harold and Maude quality to Zero and Agatha that is, intentional or not, I think is a beautiful tribute to the love story at the center of Harold and Maude. I mean, it's not a one-to-one sort of thing, but it's got that same sort of quirky energy to it. So it's interesting to me because it seems as if, at least in this regard, the two of us are just polar opposites on our reactions to what was on screen. And I find that so fascinating because we tend to stay pretty much in the same lane, just sort of with a little bit of variance up to this point where it's, I might be in the 2.5 to 3 star, but it's not this seemingly imbalanced.
Yeah. Yeah. Like with Darjeeling Limited, like I was really interested to see what you'd say about Darjeeling Limited, and we could have been more in step with that movie. Like even when we disagreed about Royal Tenenbaums, which is my favorite, like you still understood what worked and and why people like it. With this one, like I get what you're saying about Zero, and I mean I understand what you are saying. So, like because you said am I making sense here? Like yes, you're making sense. I mean even if that was his intention, that doesn't make it entertaining to me, because like if you get someone who's not entertaining to prop up someone who is entertaining, I mean you definitely have done that, but it's not a great thing to watch. It's something where like utilize what's on screen, utilize what you have, utilize your characters. And I think that's the problem that I have, is that you have Gustav, who's such a charismatic scene stealer that everybody let him steal the scene. And by kind of like what you were saying, like that felt like by design. And I think that in itself was a poor design, because you don't want it just to be the Gustav show, because maybe I'm biased because I'm judging this by previous Wes Anderson films, which I guess might not be too fair to the movie itself, but he has such great ensemble casts in previous films. And like you just look at this. I'm just going to read down here. You have F. Murray Abraham, Adrian Brody, Willem Dafoe, Jeff Goldblum, Harvey Keitel, Jude Law, Bill Murray, Ed Norton, I can never pronounce her name, Saoirse Ronan, Jason Schwartzman, Leah Seydoux, Tilda Swinton, Tom Wilkinson. That is just mind-blowing of all of a cast, dude. Like just these stellar actors. And it's just, you build a story just to build up, to just to prop up one guy. It's just, I understand your rationale about Zero, like the past Zero propping up Gustav and putting more focus on F. Murray Abraham, but we don't see F. Murray Abraham that much, and we see Zero all the time. I'd rather be entertained on the screen than just watch, a void pop up the concierge.
I don't at all think that he's a void, not by any stretch. We're just gonna completely disagree on this one. Because again, let me ask you this then, because we've touched on how you talked about how most people, when you ask them what their favorite Wes Anderson movie, if they're a Wes Anderson fan, they say this. If they're a Metallica fan, it's "And Justice for All." But if they're not really a Metallica fan, it's that album that came out in the 90s, right?
I'm not saying if they're not really, I'm not like gatekeeping. I'm just saying if they haven't been exposed to their other work.
I'm not gatekeeping, please, blah, blah, whatever, made up term. Anyway.
All terms.
What? Oh, yes. Oh, thank you, Professor. So what I'm asking though, right, is if that's the case, is it puzzling to you why, up to this point, we have had Wes Anderson throw, what was it, $80 million at Life Aquatic, and it didn't do great. And then we had Fantastic Mr. Fox, which, it's an animated movie, and people weren't really going for it. Darjeeling Limited has its problems, even though it's got all of these big names and everything like that. Why then this becomes a huge success?
This is his most successful film to date. It was a $25 million budget, and it made $173 million. That's crazy.
So let me ask you this: given what you see as its key flaw there, why do you think it resonated with audiences at large? What do you think worked for them? Was it groupthink? Was it, I have to be on, because it did get so many positive notices from critics. And
it's got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think you would have to be foolish to think that does not affect an audience's reactions to a movie.
The Rotten Tomatoes rating?
No,
or
not
Rotten. What do you mean?
The air of critique can definitely impact. It's sort of like the emperor has no clothes sort of thing. Everybody's afraid to think that they don't get what works so well about it. I'm not saying that happened here. Okay. And you'll see when we get to our ratings that I definitely don't think that happened here. But how do you account for it that people would respond so strongly to it given that flaw? And I'm not saying that in a challenging way. I'm asking you legitimately, like, how do you approach that intellectually? How do you, what is it that worked for people as opposed to what didn't for you?
I wish I could give you a grand answer. Like, I wish I could say like, I think this is it. This is it. This is it. I wish I could give you something pretentious of me to say where it's just like, like Transformers makes money and, like those aren't good films. Like I wish I could, use it as a punching bag, but honestly, it is completely puzzling to me. And I'm not saying that to look down on people who like it. I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of critic. And like I said, I don't hate this film, but the fact that this is his most financially successful film to date is just completely is puzzling to me, because when you look at his previous films, he has such better films than this. Even if you think this is great, he has such better made films than this. And it's just, I honestly don't know. What I'd love to turn around on you and ask you, why do you think a general audience is not why you like it, but why do you think the general audience connected to it and not his previous ones?
I would say, in all honesty, that it is because there's such a stronger central character. I think that people are just wired to respond more to a strong central character or a strong central set of characters, a big 2 or 3. I will go ahead because I love to incite Trek fan anger, but it's the reason why Star Trek movies with the old crew are so much better than Next Generation movies, is because you have the triumvirate. You have the big 3, and all of the discussion and structure and everything is very clear. You have your guy in the middle, you have your person on the left, you have your person on the right, and they're all arguing back and forth with all of the grand themes and the point of the movie and stuff like that. Whereas when you get to the Next Generation, if you're a fan of the series, it's great because you're used to the ensemble approach, because it's, that's the way the TV series was. You had Captain Picard, but it was generally ensemble. I think that in Grand Budapest, instead of having that ensemble approach, you have a much stronger central character. Probably, I would say, the strongest central character since Steve Zissou, which I still think it's a travesty that didn't have more success, because the first movie I would show, if I encountered somebody who was not a huge Wes Anderson fan, they saw Grand Budapest Hotel and they said, wow, I loved that. What else do you have that you would recommend? My first question would be, well, did you see The Life Aquatic? And even if their answer is yes, I would say, I invite you to go back and rewatch it, because you're going to find a lot of the same things that worked there worked here.
That's interesting. I mean, I can't comment on agreement with you about that, because like I said, I'm puzzled. I don't know. But the idea that it has a strong central character that people can latch onto, I mean, I think that makes sense. I really hate that you brought up Star Trek, because now I just want to argue with you about what you said about Star Trek, because
coming soon to Houselights, the works of Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I think that's interesting. Yeah. It is still a mystery to me. I wish Sean was here, because I feel like he'd be able to kind of chime in and like either agree with me, agree with you, disagree with me, disagree with you, or kind of comment on the what I'm trying to say is, let's get the simple man's opinion. Like, let's talk to Sean.
See, you were talking about getting the simple man, Sean. Check out his show, Missing Frames, on
at thenerdparty.com.
I was thinking about getting Brandon Shea Mutala on here, specifically because this movie changes aspect ratios 3 times. And I would love to see exactly how high his blood pressure went as a direct result of the aspect ratio changing so much.
Yeah, he wrote about that in his Letterboxd review, where he just started fuming about the aspect ratio changes. He was like basically fighting within himself to stop mentioning it. Longtime listeners will remember Brandon, who was with us for Fincher and Nolan, who just can't stand aspect ratio changes. Where Nolan did it just for the sake of IMAX, Anderson did it for the sake of stylistic approach.
Exactly.
I really want to know his opinion on that.
But I mean, it is really specifically very stylistic, and it's very apparent that it's so stylistic, especially because when it goes to that Academy ratio, that's the era of the story that's being told. And then it goes, I want to get your take on the switch to black and white during that climactic scene at the end.
Yeah, that was confusing to me.
It was confusing to you. Why? Yeah. I'm curious. Do you think it was confusing to the point of distracting and pulling you out of the film, or was it something you could rationalize?
It was confusing to the point where it took me out of the film, because like if we went to another layer of Inception, and we went back further than our pastel time frame at the 30s, like if we went back even further and put it in black and white, I could get that. Like if we went to a 5th level, because when we started with the girl with the book, then went to Tom Wilkinson, then went to Jude Law, then went to Gustav, like we continued to go back in time. But then when we do another stylistic change by going to black and white, we're actually continuing our timeline, if not going to the future just a little bit. So why did we go in black and white? And I shouldn't be thinking all of this while I'm watching. I should be enjoying the story and just going and going along with the ride. So that felt like an odd choice that was unnecessary. What do you think?
I think it's a pretentious choice,
Yes.
but I think that it is also a very clever and good choice, specifically because it's obviously the Nazis have shown up. And this is the true end of the era that Gustav is trying to hold on to. And so we have a direct counterpoint to the previous scene where they get stopped and it's still in color, of how he could finagle his way through connection and emotion to get out of the situation. And then we hit this point in history, in life, where all of it is gone. And he doesn't realize it. That this is no longer a world he can even operate in. There's not even the vestige of memory. And so if you put it together, you have the pastel, then you have this black and white period that in a sense breaks everything. And that's why the colors are so much more muted and unpleasant in, up through the 1960s before the hotel is demolished, in this more utilitarian era. So in a sense, the color gets sapped out in this moment in history. And then when it comes back, it's not really as vibrant as it used to be. Pretentious? Yes. Have I sat down and talked with Wes Anderson or with Robert Yeoman about it? I have not, but that's my interpretation of it.
I really like that interpretation. I do. I think that makes sense. I think that's from an Anderson point of view. I think that's very on brand for how his brain works. It's kind of like when journalists say, according to an individual familiar with the president's thinking.
Yes,
it's like,
right.
What the heck does that mean? But I would say, yes, that sounds, that sounds like someone who is familiar with Wes Anderson's thinking. Like you said, it's pretentious. I do I think even if you didn't have that explanation, which does give the choice weight, I still think it would be pretentious. But I do like your justification more than just let's do something different.
But see, I think that's what's interesting, is because then it does sort of open up the whole question of, just because something's pretentious doesn't make it a bad choice. Like, it can still be pretentious as all hell, but still be a good choice. And I think those are sometimes some of the most interesting choices that are out there, because on a base level, when something is pretentious, I want to hate it. I want to hate it so much. I'm like Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Oh, he's an educated man. Now I know I hate him, right? But when it works and it's pretentious, it's almost like this. I know that it was really a good choice, specifically because I want to hate it, but I don't. And I'm never going to listen to the commentary, because I'm terrified now that I'm going to go back and Wes Anderson is going to say, yeah, we did this in black and white because, yeah, why the hell not? World War II movies were in black and white. And I'm just going to rage at myself. And I'm going to come back and erase every copy of this podcast that was ever distributed.
When you started off into the spiel about how you imagined his reasoning, I thought for sure you were going to make like a Schindler's List reference. Like, well, like it involved, like pseudo Nazis and Ray Fiennes was in it. And so black and white back in the day. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't go that direction.
I am too. And again, terrified. Maybe that was the reasoning, in which case I'll have to retract everything I said.
Now I'm going to go and listen to the commentary. Well, I think this is a good place to end, because I do really like that conversation piece. And I love that we're towards the end of the movie. Do you have, before we get into the ratings, do you have anything else that you want to say about this movie? Like what you liked, what you didn't like?
I would say that the one part that I kind of struggle with is that downhill slalom is a bit much. That's sort of the point where it really starts to sort of wear thin and get a little too zany. but I do think it pulls back just in the nick of time. Like if it had gone on for one more minute, I probably would have checked out and had a completely different reaction to the film. So it's kind of amazing. I guess Barney Pilling, the editor, deserves a lot of credit because maybe there was a discussion where he said, "You know what? Let me take 45 seconds out of it. Let's see how it works. Let's see how it works."
Yeah.
So what about you?
I agree with you on that one. That felt a little zany, but actually, honestly, it didn't really bother me that much because when we get to that point, I'm just kind of like, why not? Like, why the hell not? By the time we get there, I do want to give a little credit to Jeff Goldblum because I don't think he does get enough credit for this film.
Oh, yes,
because I think he definitely plays kind of the straight man. You know, like he's kind of surrounded by this, and like oftentimes how lawyers are presented, like, you know, in something like Frank Oz and Knives Out. You know, you're surrounded by maniacs, but yet you're just trying to do what you need to do for for legal reasons. With Jeff Goldblum, I felt like he very much grounded the story, and like he was the voice of reason, and I loved his spiel, like that really long monologue with difficult. Like it was a difficult monologue, but yet he gives it with a straight face, and he does it so well. Like he doesn't chew the scenery, but he also doesn't rush his words. But at the same time, you're kind of like, wait, that was a long take. Like that was that was a mouthful. So I definitely want to give credit to him.
And he has an absolutely typical but lovely Jeff Goldblum reaction to the cat being thrown out of the window. that stunned, unsure of what emotion to express look on his face of, did he just throw my cat out the window? Like that was such a Jeff Goldblum moment. And but yeah, everything you said, I completely agree. I think that Goldblum is a wonderful addition to this mix. Absolutely.
So John Mills, friend of mine.
Yes.
What would you rate this film? What would you rate this hotel on?
You're gonna hate
Google
me.
Hotels.
5 stars.
Really?
I adore this film.
Man, I'm super surprised. I was really, really surprised.
I was on the verge of tears the first time I saw it. When he said that Gustav had been shot. I was, and this time I wasn't at that point, but I think this movie is just extremely affecting. And I give a lot of credit to F. Murray Abraham for that. I think that his narrative tone is perfect. Mm-hmm. I think that he is, like Jeff Goldblum, overlooked. And I think that F. Murray Abraham and Jeff Goldblum and even Tony Revolori have the unfortunate fate of being with Ralph Fiennes in a tour de force moment. But like any actor with a tour de force moment, it's the actors and actresses around him that make it happen, that push it over the edge. And I think that the cast here works in support, again, just like Life Aquatic, work in support of a fascinatingly quirky and interesting main character, and help propel the story along. So yeah, there you go. 5 stars. And how low did you rate it, my dear friend?
Man, I'm so utterly surprised. Like, because I could tell by the way you were talking about it that you really enjoyed it, and you've thought about it. You had really good reasoning as to why you enjoy these things. You have really good reasoning as to why things worked. But I never expected a 5-star out of you. Like, I really didn't. That's super surprising. 2.5 stars from me.
What is wrong with you, and why are you dead inside?
Oh man, I mean, you know me. Like you know my tastes, and you know I'm not a hater, as the kids say. Like I know that I feel like there are times when I am much more liberal with my stars than you. I feel like when a movie earns your star rating, it really earns it. Like I feel like if you and I felt the exact same about a movie, we'd at least be a 0.5 star different. Most likely on average a star different. Like if I gave something 4.5 stars, you'd be like, yeah, no, 3.5, easy. But
yeah, I could see that.
this is a wide gap. And that, for me, it really is. I've seen this movie 3 times now. I saw it in the theater, saw it once when I bought it, saw it once for this podcast, and I felt the same way every single time. I just don't connect with it. I don't like the supporting cast for the most part. I think there's definite gems in there. Of course, F. Murray Abraham was amazing. Of course he was. But just like when you spent so much time with Zero and Agatha, I'm just like, I don't care. And it's just, I think that's the main thing for me, is that like the main thing that I like about Wes Anderson films is the ensemble cast. And I know that the reviews in this film really talk about how it's a stellar ensemble cast, but yet they described Ralph Fiennes' performance as transformative. And while I agree with that, the latter, I definitely don't agree with the former. And so I just can't hit this one home, because if you don't have good characters, in my opinion, then you just don't have a good movie. And thus it's down to 2.5, miss the mark.
Wow. Well, I'm fascinated to see where we end up with the next film, which is one I have not seen, Isle of Dogs, and that will be next time. But surely, as much as I annoyed and enraged people with my take on the Star Trek films, you've enraged somebody out there with your take on the Grand Budapest Hotel. Where can they find you hiding online?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at The Insane Robin. You can also find me on this network at thenerdparty.com. I have a couple of archive shows that I'm very proud of. Nerd Nuptial, Punch It, Second Contact. Yeah, just please check it out. It's a lot of fun, especially the one that I did with my wife, Nerd Nuptial. It's we tell our baby story, and we tell so many other things, and we kind of dish out on what we think about pop culture. John, where can we find you?
Look for Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE. Social network of choice. That's what I always love to say. Find me on Letterboxd, where I'm dishing out my 5-star reviews of Wes Anderson gems like this. And you can find me here on the network, co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast with Matthew Rushing. And every so often I pop up on other places. Find me and hit me on the top of the head like a game of whack-a-mole, I guess.
So please tune in next time for Isle of Dogs, and thank you for visiting House of Anderson.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.